Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to week 3, session 3, reading skills. Okay, glad to see all of you. Today is a continuation of the discussion we started last week, Introduction to Reading, Part 2. So in the previous class, we started our discussion about issues related to the reading activity, and today we're going to continue this discussion. So let me go to my slides and present the same slides and cover what we had left. No one is to present today. The first group to present will begin next week. So next week is skimming and scanning, unit 1. Who is the leader of group 1? So are you aware that you're gonna present next week? Have you planned, or you still have time anyhow to plan for the presentation? Make it memorable, make it interesting, make it enjoyable, end it with a Kahoot quiz, and try to get a full mark. 20. Do 20. Okay. Reading skills, week 3, introduction to reading. Okay. I assume everyone can see the slides. Am I right?
Yes, doctor.
All right. Minimize a bit. These are the topics for discussion. We've discussed the first, I think, 7 topics, if I am not mistaken. We've discussed the first 7 topics. Am I right? Why there is no response? Can you affirm what I am saying, or deny it? Haven't we discussed the first 7 topics?
Yes, Doctor.
Alright then. So today we're going to continue topic number 8 until the end. But before that, let's briefly try to recall what we discussed. We began our class last week with a definition or some definitions of reading, and we stressed reading as a process. We stressed the process element. We also stressed reading as a skill, reading as an activity, the ing in reading and the implication of ing, an activity that has to be done, and it's only in the act of doing the activity that you master it. And so reading is something to be done again and again, to be mastered. So proficiency in reading, just like any other skill, can be gained or achieved by way of a practice. And this is the case with language as a whole. Language, and that's why I prefer to use languaging, the term languaging, ing, to denote and connote the importance of engaging in languaging, in exchanging acts of communication, in interacting, in conversing, in communicating, in engaging in discourse, in using language to learn it, to master it. We've already seen that life is a continuous, a constant flow of discourse, of communication. And so language learning should mean being able to engage in discourse, fulfilling your needs by way of interacting and engaging in communication. So speaking, reading, listening, writing. All of these are activities, communicative activities. Communicative activities, whether receptive or productive. So we've also highlighted the fact that reading is a multifaceted process involving a number of elements or components such as word recognition, vocabulary, comprehension, fluency, and motivation. And that reading involves skills of perception as well as cognition. You need to see, decode, interpret symbols, using your knowledge of phonemic awareness, phonics, and fluency. And in doing so, your brain is also at work. Your cognition is also at work. Comprehension we defined as the process of making sense of words, sentences, and also connected text. Readers typically make use of background knowledge, vocabulary, grammatical knowledge, or linguistic knowledge, experience with text, and other strategies to help them understand written text. So a number of things. Comprehension is understanding what is being read. Then we talked also about the critical reading. We've said that comprehension is not passive assimilation merely of information, but active engagement in inference and problem solving. And that you should be a resisting reader, a critical reader. Do not just accept what is written because of being written. No. Apart from the Holy Quran, probably nothing is sacred, because the Holy Quran is the only book that is divine. Even other holy or sacred texts, scriptures, have been rewritten by humans. There are human elements in them. So we need to take even what we think sacred with a pinch of salt. And so, be a resisting reader, be a critical reader in order not to be manipulated easily, be gullible, be naive, deceived easily. This doesn't mean that everything written is also shit or hogwash. No. But there is much deception in the world. There are many criminals, the prisons are full of criminals. And so we just have to be careful. There will be a chapter, the last chapter in the textbook towards the end of the semester, dedicated to reading critically. Until then, I still wish you would become, from now onwards, at least, as I said, do not take what is written or what is in print as sacred. Alright? So in case there is manipulation, you won't be, you won't fall victim to such manipulation or, fraud. We moved on and talked about theories of reading after that, and we spoke about the 3 theories, beginning with the schema theory. And we've said that the theory, schema theory, if you recall, schema theory, we've said, states that meaning does not come up or rise from the words we read, but rather words act as a guide. They activate prior knowledge. Words, a text only activates what we already know. And it is this activation that makes us construct meaning. And we gave an example of a transportation. You come across the topic transportation, immediately comes to your mind things such as cars, roads, traffic, police, so things that are related to. So what the text made is that it helped you retrieve the schemata or patterns of a structure or knowledge you have already in your mind. So this was one theory, the schema theory. We also talked about a related notion to schema theory, and that is top-down and bottom-up processing. And we also exemplified that. So top-down is using your background. You begin from the top. You use you bring your imagination, your conjecture, your background knowledge to the text to understand it. In bottom-up processing, you begin at the bottom. So you look at words, sentences, the paragraphs, and then you move to the bigger picture. So the notion of top-down and bottom-up processing. And then we spoke also about another model or theory, and that's the interactive model, where we combine both types of processing, top-down and bottom-up, to understand, or in our attempt to interpret a text and construct meaning. Are you following? I am just, going quickly through what we talked about last week, helping you brush up. Next, we talked about these important types of texts and reading, and we've said that a distinction is made in literature between extensive reading and intensive reading. And we've highlighted the importance of reading extensively. Or today we're going to also stress the importance of reading extensively, because we do read intensively. Many of that, we come across many short texts and we read them trying to understand every bit. An essay, an article assigned by one of our professors. So we do read intensively, but not many of us read extensively. Many of us do not really read extensively, and so we need to develop a love of reading extensively, reading whole books. This is a point I'm going to raise again today at the end of the class, but the distinction here is just to let you know that certain texts are meant to be read intensively, where the goal is accuracy. You need to know everything. Other texts are meant to be read extensively, where the goal is fluency. That is getting a global understanding rather than a detailed understanding. A global overview rather than a close reading or a detailed reading. This is like when you read a novel, or a certain book. So you are not meant with the details. It's a fluency activity meant to improve your fluency in reading fluency, and also your English in general. Next, we talked about the characteristics of written language, which is meant to be read. So we spoke about permanence, processing time, distance, orthography, complexity, vocabulary, and formality as characteristics of the written text, which is meant to be read. Next we spoke about the components of reading, the big five. And we saw that reading is a multifaceted, complex activity process involving word recognition, and this means phonemic awareness, phonics, and also the activity involves comprehension, fluency, and motivation, vocabulary and comprehension, the big five. As for phonemic awareness and phonics, you usually get to know this at a very early age, when you are in your nursery school. Like, I mean, now I am teaching my kid, for example, 4 years and a half, phonics. Phonemic awareness is the realization that words comprise sounds, are made up of sounds, and so when I say ka, ta, that's a cat. So I know that the word cat is made up of smaller units. This sequence of sounds is not just one sound, but rather made up of a number of sounds, the ka and the a and the ta, the phonemes. So this is known as phonemic awareness. Once children become aware of the fact that words are made up of sounds, distinct sounds, sound contrasts, then we move on to phonics, and that is the realization that words have written symbols. So this is crucial for reading and writing. We teach them that words have also written symbols, and so each sound has a value in writing. So this is known as phonics. So these are components of reading. If you don't have this knowledge, you cannot read. But being literate and being born in a literate family and a literate society, we gain this knowledge at a young age, subconsciously. Fluency, and we also talked about the fluency, reading words as part of units, knowing where to pause, punctuation marks, reading with rhythm to create the kind of musicality. So fluency involves prosody, rhythm, pausing, juncture, etc., etc. What is the meaning of ice cream? Can anyone tell me what is the meaning of ice cream?
Sweet treat.
Sorry?
Ice cream is a dessert.
So, would you like some?
It's okay.
So, look at the chat. Is this the meaning you meant?
I heard ice cream.
And what did I write?
Ice cream.
So which one?
Yeah. I heard the second one.
Say the second one.
Ice cream.
And the first one?
Ice cream.
Really?
Yeah.
You seem to be dreaming about the sweets. It's alright, you can have some after the class or during the short break. And so this is part of fluency, knowing where to pause, where to stop, the juncture, etc., etc. But we do not want to go deeper into prosody and rhythm. So this is what we discussed last week. Okay, so we're going to continue our discussion today and talk about other related issues to this important activity of reading as a way of, introducing reading, the nature of reading, as a background for this course and other reading courses in the future. Okay, now we're going to look at the 3-level guide. But before that, quickly, also we looked at we looked at components of comprehension, or the subcomponent. Comprehension, we've said, is one of the 5 components. Comprehension itself can be broken down into sub components: vocabulary, skills, schema, and text structure. And so, to improve your reading, you need to improve your vocabulary, lexical resource. You need to improve and apply skills and strategies, and you need to widen or broaden your background knowledge. That is your schema, content schema, by taking, for example, an interest in world news, by reading extensively. So this way you broaden your background knowledge, and also knowledge of text structure. This is known as text structure is part of your, I would say, linguistic or formal schema. Formal schema is your knowledge of language, grammar, and text structure. For example, you know that a paragraph has a topic sentence and supporting sentences and developing sentences. You know that the structure of the essay has 3 parts: an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. And the introduction has a thesis statement. So text structure. There are different genres, different types of text forms, and each text has its own structure. So the way we write a report is not the same like the way we write a research proposal or a thesis or a journal paper or an essay or an email or a menu, etc., etc. So there are different genres, and each genre has its own structure. So knowledge of text structure is part of comprehension. When you read a sonnet, a type of poem, and you know that the sonnet has a 14-line poem, and there are 2 types: English and Italian, with a certain rhyme scheme, A, B, B, etc. We don't want to get into details that might confuse you, but the thing is that knowledge of text structure. So this is known as formal schema, as opposed to content schema. Content schema, that is your background knowledge. And so if you have a problem with reading skills, reading, you read but you feel that you do not understand much, you check whether the problem lies in lack of vocabulary or knowledge of text structure and grammar, linguistic schema or formal schema, or content schema. You don't have enough background knowledge. You are reading a paper about chemistry and you do not have much knowledge about chemistry. So this way you can know where you are wrong or lacking and improve your knowledge in this area. So knowledge of these 4 components means greater comprehension. The last topic we discussed was the reasons for using reading texts. Why teach reading? And we've said that there is more than one good reason why we teach reading. We teach it for language acquisition, learning, interpersonal interaction. So as you read, you engage in intrapersonal interaction. And if you remember, we've said that interaction is the genesis of all learning. Genesis of all learning, meaning it's through interaction that we learn, not just language, everything. As we interact, we learn. So the more we interact, the more we learn. And the same, language is a form of learning. So as we interact through writing, speech, reading, listening, we acquire the language and learn it. Interaction, we said, can be interpersonal, or intrapersonal. So interpersonal, as when two people chat, like we also now, though it is online, but it's still face to face. Asynchronous, or rather synchronous online environment. So as we engage in interpersonal communication, we learn, and as we engage in intrapersonal interaction, we also learn. Like when we read a book, it's your mind, you and your mind. When you watch a movie or the news, a form of intrapersonal interaction. So you acquire language subconsciously. Language will soak in your mind. So the more you watch the news, the more you read, for example, the more you listen, the more you acquire. The more you write, the more you acquire. The more you read. So these are forms of interaction. And language is learned through interaction. In the process, the continual semiotic process or activity of engaging in discourse, of interacting. Okay guys, following what I'm saying? Do you find it Japanese? Do you find what I'm saying Japanese, or do you understand what I'm saying?
English.
You find it gibberish or English?
Find it in English.
I understand, Doctor.
Do you appreciate it, or do you think it's a load of rubbish?
Appreciate it.
If it's rubbish, I will shut up. For language acquisition, we teach reading, a source for receptive vocabulary, a source for reproductive vocabulary, expanded vocabulary, and knowledge of correct grammar usage, a better sense of how words and phrases are used, a better understanding of sentence structure, models for future writing, the ability to write more natural sounding English, as opportunities for language study and analysis, more confidence in speaking and writing, and a practice in the reading skill. Alright, so this is what we talked about last week. So what are we gonna do today? We're gonna continue our introduction by talking first about the levels of reading, or ways of thinking about the reading, the 3-level guide. We're gonna watch a couple of videos about this topic, but very quickly before we watch the videos, there are 3 levels of reading. You can think of reading as multi-layered, as having layers. Think of reading as layers. The more you engage and uncover of these layers, the more meaning you construct. And we talked about theories of reading, how we construct meaning. The basic level or way of thinking is the literal level. What words literally mean? Simple. No metaphorical language here. Just like the language presented to children. But after we quickly look at the literal level, we move and engage in the inferential level, where we look at meanings suggested rather than stated, meanings communicated implicitly rather than explicitly. And much of what is communicated is actually suggested. And so we have to read between the lines. not the lines, that's literal, between the lines, to look for these hidden messages expressed indirectly. If we fail to do that, we fail to recover many meanings, and in certain cases we fail to recover the message when we think that we might have understood. And I will talk about this a bit more when we look at the distinction, or when we look at an example between literal and implied language later. So that's another level of meaning, or layer of meaning, or way of thinking. How do we do that? We do that by combining our background knowledge, our prior knowledge, with evidence from the text. When we do that, we infer, we make inferences. We make inferences. And making inferences is a skill. How to make inferences. How to infer what is implied.
You want to go to a shop to buy me ice cream, Mama?
You would like me to go to a shop to buy you ice cream?
Yeah.
Alright, we'll see this evening. She would like me to go to a shop to buy her ice cream. Which ice cream? Maybe you can ask that sister. She's very good at screaming for ice cream. Okay, where are we? Where are we? My daughter has broken my train of thought. Where was I? So the inferential so anyhow, there will be also a class a week about inferences, how to make inferences. So no worries. Okay, Tanusa, no worries. You look beautiful. So why that terrible cat? You look more beautiful than the cat you were. Who's more beautiful, the cat or you? Be frank.
I don't know, doctor.
You or the cat? In my eyes, you. I don't know about your mom's eyes.
Thank you, doctor.
No sweat. The third level of reading is the evaluative or a critical reading. We've already touched upon a critical reading, being a critical reader. So, critical reading, we need actually to go beyond the text, to look at the author. Who is he? What are his credentials? If this is a website, an article from a website, what website is this? Is it reliable or unreliable or somewhat reliable? Is it a government website or we look at the evidence. Is it sufficient? Is it varied or just one type of evidence? So when we look at the critical level, or think critically about reading, we are actually moving beyond the text to look at issues of objectivity, reliability, credibility, completeness, relevance, evidence, support, sufficiency, the tone of the text, whether the author relies on assumptions, being subjective, being objective, etc., etc. Let's now watch the one of the videos about the 3-level guide, or the 3 ways of thinking about reading. Okay? Nur Anisa has just woken up. Nur Anisa is in a bad need of some ice cream. Okay. Let's, where is that? Let me now stop presenting this to present the video. Alright, can you see the video?
Today we're going to talk about literal.
Can?
Yes, doctor.
Alright, please listen.
Yes, doctor.
You need, when you read, to engage in the text literally, inferentially, and critically. Okay?
Inferential and critical comprehensive reading. So first off, let's talk about what reading comprehension is. It's simply understanding what is being said or read. When we talk, though, about literal, inferential, and critical reading, though, we're talking about 3 different levels or layers of reading, each one getting a little bit more complex. So let's start with literal comprehension. Literal is simply what the text says. So when we think back to those close reading strategies, when we read a text 3 times, the first time we read a text, we're looking for what it says. The second time we read a text is how it says it, and the third time we read a text is what it means. So those 3 times that we read a text, we also increase our comprehension. So in a literal comprehension, we're just looking at what the author is saying. It's the form of recognizing and recalling facts, identifying what the main idea was, what supporting details there are, putting things into categories, outlining, summarizing. So just getting the gist of it, what it says. You locate information, and you also use context clues to start to supply meaning. So during literal comprehension, these are some questions that you can be asking yourself. What words state the main idea of the story? How does the author summarize what he or she is saying? What happened first, then second, then last? How are things alike and how are they different? And what things belong together? So if we think about our second time we read a text, that's how it says it. That's when we start the inferential level of reading comprehension. When we are doing the inferential level, we are inferring things. We are reading between the lines about things that are not directly stated. This includes anytime we're looking at interpretation of figurative language, when we draw conclusions, we predict outcomes, we determine mood, and we judge the author's point of view. Those are all going to be within that inferential or how it says it stage. So here are some questions that are usually asked during inferential reading. What does the author value? What is the theme? What effect does the character or event have on the story? And how do you think the story will end? So, first step, literal. Second step, inferential. And each time your reading is getting more and more complex. So the third level is critical reading, and that is what it means. That third time that you've read a text, now you can really start to critically evaluate it. So this is where you are looking at why the author says what he or she says. It requires you to use things that you already know from your own experience to make evaluations about the quality of the writing, values the writer has, the author's reasoning, any simplifications or generalizations you can make. It's also reacting emotionally and intellectually with the material. So this is where you really get into that highest level of comprehension, the highest level of thinking. We are really evaluating what a text means. So things to ask yourself: could this really happen? Is the argument logical and focused? Is there evidence being presented? Are there any alternatives to what's being offered? Is this a fact? Is it an opinion, and why? Do you agree or disagree with the author? And what is the best solution for a problem? So every time you've read the text, you become more and more critical of what is going on. You are looking at what it means. Why is it important to know that there are different levels of comprehension? Well, first off, it's going to make you a skilled and much stronger reader. So you can identify, all right, so that was literal. I just got what it says. Inferential, I'm starting to read between the lines a little bit more. And then when I get to critical, I can really evaluate that text because I have a more complete understanding of it. It's a skill that you have to learn and then develop. It doesn't just happen automatically. But the more and more you read and the more you apply these strategies, the better reader you're going to become. Now, in the lasting realm, it also is going to make you a better writer because the more you're exposed to language, your vocabulary expands, your knowledge of grammar expands, and when that's combined with these kinds of reading experiences where you go from literal to inferential to critical, you become a much better writer who is able to express him or herself much better. So reading and writing are so tied together. Now, if we apply this to our school-wide Spartans Annotate, remember that summarize, predict, ask questions, reflect and react, target text structure, analyze author's purpose, and note connections, we're going to look at each level. So in summarize, that's just what it says, okay? That's your literal level of thinking again. Predicting, that's where you start to get more into the text. You're starting to make some connections. That's just inferential. So you're at the second level of reading comprehension. When you ask questions, though, that is inferential, and it can also be critical because when you're starting to evaluate the text and you're starting to put more thought into what's going on, that can become a critical evaluation of it. When you reflect and react, that is critical reading. You really have a grasp of the text and you're able to not only react to, how you're feeling towards it, but also reflect on what the author's saying and your thoughts about what he is saying. Targeting text structure, inferential, because you have to be able to not only identify the text structure, but know how that impacts the overall meaning of the text. You analyze author's purpose, also inferential because you're getting an understanding of why this person wrote the text. And when you note connections, when you can connect what has happened in that text to your own life and explain how, that is that critical level of comprehension. So just to recap, comprehension is understanding what's been read, okay? And there are 3 levels. First off, there's the literal level. In the literal level, you are just seeing what the text says. You're summarizing, you're looking at the key details. In the second level, you are thinking inferentially. So you're making inferences, you're making connections, you're starting to ask some questions about the text. And then on that third level of reading, the third time you read a text, that should be where you're starting to really critically comprehend what you are reading. You are going beyond. You're starting to see why the author wrote this. You're evaluating the author's writing and the author's argument, okay? We do this so we can become much better readers who are more aware constantly of what we are doing while we read. We have purpose, we have motive, and we're able to increase our reading comprehension. So again, those are the 3 levels of reading comprehension, the 3 ways of thinking.
The 3 levels of comprehension, the 3 ways of thinking about a reading. We're going to watch another video about the same topic, the 3-level guide, so please stay attuned.
Hey guys, today we're going to be having a look at the 3-level reading guide. In this video, we are going to walk through a 3-level reading guide together, and we're going to go through what are the different stages of reading. Personally, I love the 3-level reading guide because it really helps us to learn that reading is individual and personal, and that we all read a book in a slightly different way. The purpose of the three-level reading guide is so that you can consider and think about a text without your teacher explicitly telling you what something means, what the symbolism is, how to interpret and understand this text. The purpose of the three levels of reading is for you to develop this skill on your own and not need to rely on your teacher to explicitly teach you every step. This is a life skill, and it's something that will help you to really love and develop your reading. So the three levels of reading are literal, inferential, and evaluative. We normally start with the literal, which is the surface, what's happening, and we only consider what is written in the text. Now, this is the level that should be pretty similar between you and your peers and friends. The next step is the inferential level, where we're reading between the lines and we're thinking a little bit outside the text. We're starting to take in a little bit of our knowledge outside of just what is written on the page. And the third level is evaluative. And in that level, we're really analysing the text, we're using our opinion, and we're thinking more outside the text than we are in any other level. Now, the image that we're going to be looking at is an image created by Sean Tan from Tales of Outer Suburbia. The literal level is when we look at what is happening, what is stated in fact, what is the text about on the surface, where is the text set, who is in the text, and all that really basic information that just...
So all these kinds of questions, the answers to them is easy because it is stated. You don't have to dig deep or to read between the lines to find the answers. What is happening? You can see what is happening. You can see, for example, some strange creatures, obviously lying or sitting on a hilltop. We can see also a girl lying supine with a book, and we notice also the other creatures also, each one is holding a book. We can see a tab, we can see a stack of books with a cup of coffee, a teapot here. We can see in the distant a foggy town with the smoke bellowing in the sky from factories. So what is when we look at the literal level, then there is no, it is important. I mean, it's almost impossible to get wrong answers because you are just stating what is stated. And so there is no right or wrong answer here because you will state what you see. So that's literal comprehension, what the children would be able to do. But if we just stick to this way of thinking, to the literal comprehension level, and we do not go further, then we've just only touched the surface and we've only got basic information because there are other levels of meaning, layers of meaning. For example, the inferential level, where we look at meanings suggested rather than stated, implied. So this is then when we engage in the inferential level of comprehension. So let's look at this image, this visual text. By the way, this is a visual, an image. And texts can be made up of visuals or verbals. Most texts nowadays are multimodal, meaning they combine more than one media. We talk about multimedia nowadays. Multimedia, a form of communication that combines different forms of communication, like visuals, verbals, words, sound, video, animation, visual communication, multimodal communication, multimodal discourse. And so it is a text because images convey meaning. Whatever that can convey meaning is semiotic, is meaningful, is meaning making. Words constitute only one form or mode of communication, but there are other ways. The way we dress can also be significant in certain ways. When I see a woman dressed in a certain way, I may get the impression that she's Indian, that she's a Chinese, that she's an Arab. Codes of dress are also meaningful. The landscape, the physical environment. So Words are only one mode of communication. So let's look at this text again now. We have just read the text literally. Now we're going to read the text inferentially.
Just is really on the surface of the text. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do is to pause here and answer one or two of these questions for yourself and see how you go.
We've already done that. Who is in the text? We see, a girl here, a strange creature.
So, my literal understanding is that there is a girl reading a novel. The girl is surrounded by creatures who are also reading. These creatures are not animals that exist in our real world. Instead, they have features that are both man-made and natural. We can see that there's a tap. We can see that one that kind of has the face of a crocodile. The girl is on a tall hill away from town, but there is a town in the distance. It does appear to be a sunny day, but there is smog far away coming from a factory. So, what did your literal look like? It might have been similar to mine, you might have picked up on some slightly different details, but the idea with the literal is that there really is a correct answer. These are the things that have been stated. They are fact. We know that it has happened. Now for the inferential level. This is my personal favourite of all three levels. In this, we ask, what do you infer? What do you think the text might be about? What are the themes, the ideas, the key messages? And are there any literary devices used within this text? Okay, so pause here and we'll see what you come up with.
Alright, now I would like you to read this text, visual text, inferentially. We have just read it literally, at the literal level. Now read it inferentially. To do so, try to use your imagination, your mind, your conjecture, your knowledge of the world, and what you see in the text. Combining these two will result in inferences. That is, meanings communicated indirectly or suggested. So look at the text, try to come up with, what do you think, what interpretations can we make? What messages can we extract from this text? Can you see the text?
Yes, doctor.
Are you trying to read it inferentially? So, what do you think? Can anyone come up with, an interpretation? What can be communicated from this visual composite text? Apart from the literal, what do you think? What do you think the author is trying, the writer or the artist here, the producer, is trying to communicate?
I think they're trying to communicate a friendship.
Can you please speak louder? Remember that there is no right or wrong answer here. It's just how you, depending on your imagination, your background knowledge, and the text. So let's see what you can come up with. Please raise your voice.
I think they're trying to tell a story about a friendship,
Go ahead, explain.
and the friendship is that they are sitting together and enjoying whatever they're doing, as well as enjoying the view on a hill.
Remember that whatever you say has to be supported by evidence from the text. Meaning our guesses, we are making guesses now. Because, why are we making guesses? Because the meaning is not stated, as in the literal level. What do you see in the text? That is stated. Now we are trying to engage in a game of guessing, but our guesses should be educated, meaning they should not just be based on our imagination and also textual evidence from the text. So would you like to add something, Shirley?
What was wrong with my answer, doctor? Can you explain?
I haven't said it is right or wrong.
Right. So was there anything to improve in it?
I haven't said whether it's right or wrong, but what textual evidence can you provide to support your interpretation? Anyone?
They are sitting together, and I believe they are enjoying each other's presence in a way.
So it's like a reading club that fosters the spirit of friendship.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. This is how you see it. So this is one message that you get at the inferential level. Okay. What about the other guys? What messages can you extract? Can you get from this image? Remember that there are multiple interpretations. There isn't one single interpretation or message. Okay, I'll tell you about.
Doctor,
Yes.
can I try?
Sure.
What I get from this picture.
Interesting. What I get, because that's your own interpretation. What I think, what I see, what I. Okay.
What I get, what I interpret, and what I gathered from this picture is like at first it's the same as Shirley, friendship, bonding, but at the same time I think they are all escaping from reality.
Say some more.
As you can see, from where they are sitting are just grass, right?
And how are they escaping from reality?
Because you can see at the distance, the water is murky. There's smoke from the factories, and overall it looks depressing and sad. What they get from escaping reality, I mean, they're getting away from all of that to be together in a spot.
Okay, since they are engaged, what you have said, Akila, is beautiful. And I am mesmerized. But how do you look at books since they are engaged also in the activity of reading? How do you interpret this? Or how would you link this?
Yes.
How would you link this to your interpretation? Because we see a lot of books and every creature is having a book and reading.
Yes. So they're escaping reality from reading, going away and reading books. Like you can say that books let your mind wander in different places, something like that. Like when you read a story, you get immersed by it, and you feel like you're in another world.
Fantastic. This is also, as you said, this is an interesting interpretation of this visual text. I would emphasize that this text actually, in my opinion, which I share with Aquila's, it is a form of. It seems that reading is a form of escapism. Reading is meant or communicated as a form of escapism, escaping reality, harsh reality, the reality of city life, and you can see pollution, factories, smoke, and we can get the impression that they are away from the city, sitting on a hilltop and engaged in the activity of reading. And so reading takes them away from the harsh, bitter, dirty, murky reality. So it seems that there is an emphasis here, or a message communicated here, that reading can take you away from this, sublunary, worldly world to ethereal levels, where you can fly using your imagination and rise above everyone else, above the din, above the noise, above pollution. Maybe the girl is seeing these creatures also in her imagination now as she is reading. And so she is soaring in different worlds, making herself happy and away from city. What do you think of this interpretation? You see, guys, in the other class, I have 2 sections. One of my students also made a very interesting interpretation. She said, if I can recall, she said that to be at your, she stressed, she read in the image, in the text, the theme of loneliness or solitude, being alone, solitude. To be at your most creative, you need to be alone, away from city life, away from society. So she saw this theme, solitude, as a way of being creative. You see, guys, now if we do not engage in the text literally, how can we recover these meanings, or uncover these meanings, or discover these meanings, and so appreciate the text? There is no way. If we just suffice ourselves by looking at the literal message, then all these beautiful layers of meaning will be lost or missed. Can you see? Can? So I think there is a very good reason to appreciate the 3-level guide and to engage in these levels of meaning. Okay, let's now listen to what this teacher, YouTuber, is going to say, and then move on to the 3rd level of reading, and that is the critical.
Okay, so I struggled to make my inferential short enough to fit on the page, so I will elaborate a little bit more on what I've written there. So the author has used personification of the creatures. I actually think that the animals or creatures that we can see there are from the books that the young girl has read in the past. I also think that they're kind of an embodiment or a symbol of her own imagination and personality. So I think that these are kind of all of her imagination coming to life, and the things that she's read coming to life as well. I think that they're having a book club together and that she's sharing her love of reading with them. I also wonder if there is a message about how novels can help us to escape the world. We can see the town in the background that's looking smoky, it's not looking very attractive, but up on the hill she's surrounded by friends, she's surrounded by nature, and it's nice and peaceful and calming. So that's an example of the inferential level. It can be really helpful if you're doing this on a written text to include quotations that prove or help to support your ideas. Also remember that in the inferential level there are multiple different interpretations. There are incorrect answers, but these incorrect answers are if you have literally read the text in the wrong way. So if you came up with different interpretations, that's actually a really good thing. The next and final step is
Fantabulous. I think the commentator on this image, I think in her own interpretation has come up with 2 of the interpretations we have come across, or we managed to extrapolate. The friendship theme that Aquila came up with, or who came up with this? Someone talked about friendship, and the theme of escapism, reading as a way of escapism from unpleasant reality. I'm sure we can still come up with different interpretations if we try to engage more at the inferential level, bringing our imagination and by looking at the text. Okay, the third level, that's the most complex, highest level, the critical level or
evaluative stage. Now, the evaluative stage is based around your opinion. It's based around your point of view and how you feel about the text. So the questions we're going to look at are: how has the author created the literary world? Did you like the literary devices the author has used, or would you use some different ones? Did you like the voice that they created? Do you like the main characters? Did you like the setting? And how would you improve the text to become better? At the evaluative stage, we will all have our own different opinions. The main thing is that we're supporting that opinion with evidence. So pause here and we'll have a look at the evaluative level. I found that the personification of the creatures was mesmerising, and I was drawn towards the one-eyed creature that's towards the left of the image. His large eyes looking carefully at me, almost inviting me in to become part of the group. The tone and voice is peaceful and calming, and I really liked that feature of the image. But how I would improve it is that I felt that there could be a more powerful message. Given the background of the township, I wonder if that message could be something about the dangers of the city and town compared with nature and learning and reading. How did you go with your evaluation? Did you include some evidence to support your ideas? I hope that you can see the benefits of the 3-level reading guide. For me, the benefits are 5 different reasons. The first is that it's based around you, your ideas, your understanding, your own personal reading. Edmund Wilson once said that no two persons ever read the same book, and that's what this guide can really help you with, reading individually. It also allows us to read at a deeper level. It starts with the basics and moves deeper and becomes more complex as we go through. It also helps us to not skip one of these levels and to really stop and think about what we're reading. It can be done with any type of text. I normally use it with a novel, film or poetry, but as we can see there, you can even do it with an image, a painting or any other type of text. It's even better when you can share this with your friends, okay? This way that it will push your thinking into new ideas and it will extend what you already know and were thinking. To me, the most important thing is that it creates independence for you. You become less reliant on the teacher to just tell you and spoon feed you what the ideas are. You can stop and think for yourself and create your own unique interpretation of the text. I hope this video has helped. Good luck.
It has certainly helped, yes, drive the point and understand the 3 ways of thinking about a text, the 3-level guide. All right, are you still with me, guys?
Yes.
Yes, Doctor.
Okay, great. So, are you going to apply the 3 ways of thinking, the 3 levels of comprehension when you read?
Yes, Doctor.
All right. So be aware of this and try applying this kind of, or these levels of thinking and reading. Next, these are types or styles of reading: skimming, scanning, extensive reading, intensive reading, and critical reading. Already talked about extensive reading, reading whole books, intensive reading, reading shorter texts accurately and for details, and critical reading. Skimming and scanning are also 2 styles or types or skills of reading. I will just briefly touch upon them today. In the next class next week, we're going to talk about them in detail. Unit 1 next week in the textbook. Skimming is the most basic or rudimentary type of reading. its object is to familiarize you as quickly as possible with the material to be read. Both the skimming and scanning are speed reading approaches. They are meant to be done quickly. They are meant to be done as fast as possible. Skim a text for main ideas. Now, when we skim, we run our eyes quickly across a whole text to get the main idea, or the main ideas, the gist. We are not interested at this level with details. If we want the details, we go for intensive reading or a close or detailed reading. So it's a useful skill. It helps us become familiar with the text, and it helps us decide whether we want to go on and read this text or not. So skimming involves looking at the title, the topic sentence, maybe the first paragraph, the last paragraph, notice keywords, different fonts. So if we spend a minute or so, a few minutes, depending on how long the text is, to get the main idea. That's known as skimming. Scanning is also a speed reading approach, done also speedily, but the purpose is different. When we scan, our purpose is to get or extract specific information without again reading through the whole text. So you run your eyes quickly with usually a question in mind and try to get an answer to the question. For example, when did character die? When this character was born? How many people died in the accident? So you look for a specific piece of information, whether it's a date, it's a noun, a name, or a statistic, etc., etc. As I said, more about these two important skills will be next week. This is just an introduction. They are very important skills. You cannot be a proficient reader without becoming a proficient skimmer and a proficient scanner. Extensive reading, we've already talked about. That's sustained silent reading. It's a fluency activity meant for global understanding. So the goal of extensive reading is to read long texts relatively quickly and to understand general ideas without details. Intensive reading or before that, choose a text that isn't too difficult, so you won't have to struggle to understand. Then relax and enjoy it. So choose a novel or a text that you like and start practicing reading extensively. Don't interrupt the flow to look up words unless they are essential to understanding. You will learn new words even without looking them up if you read them several times. This happens often when you read several stories or articles with the same theme. And so begin reading extensively. You can even, if you read extensively, you can even use some of the titles you're going to read and add them to the log, the reading log, for one of the assignments. Remember, one of the assignments, you need to read about 10 texts, whether intensive texts or extensive texts, and fill in the log I gave you. And towards the end of the semester, you're going to choose one of the, I'm going to ask you to present or talk about one of the texts in your portfolio in the reading log. So you may want to choose a novel and start reading it, and whenever you finish reading it, fill in the log. But you could also choose also shorter texts for reading intensively. But both types of texts are needed, or types of reading, engaging in both types of reading. Intensive reading we do quite often, but not every one of us engages in extensive reading. So it's a good idea that you engage in extensive reading by reading whole books. We've already discussed intensive reading or close reading. Critical reading also we have highlighted it quickly. It's when we go beyond the text and read the text critically, when we engage in the third level or stage of reading, where we look at the evidence and see if it's relevant, sufficient, varied, the argument logical, accurate, supported by sufficient evidence, or no, the author is an authority on the subject, the source of information. So we look at issues related but beyond the immediate text. Okay, can we have someone to read this slide, please?
The whole thing.
Yes, please.
Okay. Critical reading is a form of language analysis that does not take the given text at face value, but involves a deeper examination of the claims put forth as well as the supporting points and possible counter-arguments. The ability to interpret, reinterpret, and reconstruct for improved clarity and readability is also a component of critical thinking. Reading. The identification of possible ambiguities and flaws in the author's reasoning, in addition to the ability to address them comprehensively, are essential to this process. Critical reading, much like academic writing, requires the linkage of evidential points to corresponding arguments, as acknowledged by a number of scholars as wordsmiths. A story has as many versions as it has readers. Everyone takes what he wants or can form it and thus changes it to his measure. Some pick out parts and reject the rest. Some strain the story through their mesh of prejudice. Some paint it with 1961. Read critically, considering the author's point of view and possible biases. Notice the author's emphasis, choice of words, and imagery.
Imagery. Well read. Who is this? What's your name?
Ayman.
Turn on the camera so that we can see you and
Okay.
alright, Ayman. Muhammad Ayman?
Yes.
Alright, well read.
Thank you.
Okay, how to approach a text or tackle a reading? Generally, we begin by identifying the purpose in reading. So there must be a purpose why I want to read this text. Even if this is for pleasure, even if it's for improving your English. So there must be a purpose, whether it's a test, reading for a test, for pleasure, for. So begin by identifying the purpose. Use efficient silent reading techniques for relatively rapid comprehension, especially if you are reading extensive texts. Silent reading will speed up your level of reading. But if the text is short, you could read aloud. Reading sometimes aloud also, especially if the text is short, can help you also comprehend. But silent reading can help in the case of longer texts. Skim the text for main ideas. Just said that skimming involves running your eyes quickly across the text to get the main ideas. Look at the topic sentence, keywords, first paragraph, the title page, the blurb at the back of the book, so the contents page. So skim the text for main ideas. Scan a text for specific information. Guess when you aren't certain. If you come vocabulary items that you aren't certain about, you try to guess the meaning. Analyze vocabulary, the internal structure of vocabulary, morphemic analysis. We're going to have 2 weeks dedicated for vocabulary discussion. One for contextual analysis and one for morphemic analysis or word structural analysis to help you understand or guess the meaning of unfamiliar vocabulary. Distinguish between literal and implied meaning. The implied meaning. We've already said that much of what is said or written is actually implied. People tend to imply. Listeners and readers infer. So as we read also, we try to distinguish between what is literal and what is, metaphorical or implied. Because if we read something that is meant to be implied or metaphorical, if we read it literally, then we fail to capture the message. A quick example. Imagine that one of your colleagues or one of your friends from a previous batch in the diploma in English has already graduated with a diploma in English, and you want to go to her or his home to congratulate them on this achievement. So you go to her, you knock the door, Nimrata. Your friend sees you, welcomes you, you chit chat. After a while, she excuses herself to go to the kitchen to get a coffee. When she goes to the kitchen, you are alone now. You look around at the lounge, TV lounge. You notice a big portrait on the wall behind you, graduation portrait. Your friend's graduation portrait, and you look at it. You are looking at it when your friend comes back and notices that you are looking at her graduation portrait. So you say, the frame is nice. The frame is nice. Now, put yourself in the shoes of this. Imagine that you are in this situation. Someone is looking at your graduation picture portrait, and she or he says, "The frame is nice." What should you understand and feel? Would you take these words as a praiseworthy, as a compliment, for example, or is this an insult actually? How would you interpret the message? What message would you actually? What would you understand? Tell me.
I would take it as a compliment.
Nimrata would take it as a compliment. What about Angela? What's this? Angel something?
Angelis.
Anja?
Angelis.
Angelis. Okay, what about you, Angelis? Someone looking at your graduation portrait and says, the frame is nice.
I think I would take it as an insult.
You would take it as an insult?
Yeah, for me.
Why?
Yeah.
Nimrata would take it as a compliment. She would feel happy and say thank you for being so kind. What about you, Angelis?
I guess the tone, like the way she speaks to me, I would take it as an insult. Yeah, I guess.
But apart from the tone, for God's sake, you have left the picture, me with the graduation dress, the commencement dress, and the scroll, and all this beauty and grandeur, and you just focused on the frame of the portrait. The frame? Is this what has caught your eye? This is most likely an insult. She, in other words, is saying, I like the frame is beautiful, but not the picture. The picture in it is ugly. But of course, she cannot say that directly. She resorts to implication. She is not saying that you are ugly, but when she focuses only on the frame, it means that the picture is not as beautiful. And so, most likely, your friend is making a very harsh remark, a snide, critical remark. And so, if you failed to see the implied message, then you would think that you have understood, but in fact, you haven't. Most likely, because it's bizarre. Of course, if you see the intended message, the speaker's meaning, and say, "Hey, what do you mean, Shalin, that I don't look as nice?" Of course, she most likely is going to lie. Of course, I swear to God, I don't mean that. So you've got to distinguish between the literal meaning. The literal meaning is that the frame is nice. But most likely, the message communicated is that the picture is not nice. So, okay, if someone offers you a cup of coffee and you say, coffee keeps me awake, what are we supposed to understand? Let's say I am offering you a cup of coffee and you say to me, coffee keeps you awake. What am I supposed to understand?
I think the person is probably tired or exhausted.
I think I heard my son, he's lying on the sofa, saying something. Can you come here and tell me your interpretation or understanding? He is in, come here. He is in form, he's in standard, what is standard? Standard 4, come here. Standard 4. Nimrata is saying that what she understands is that she is tired. If I want to offer someone a cup of coffee and she says, coffee keeps me awake, for Nimrata this indicates that she is tired. What do you understand? That she doesn't like or rather want coffee. If someone says coffee keeps me awake, she is saying indirectly, in other words, thank you, I do not want coffee. So the literal meaning, what words literally mean is that coffee keeps me awake. But the intended meaning, the speaker meaning is that I don't want coffee, thank you. So don't insist. Do you see what I mean? If someone says, son of a bitch, this is not a zoological opinion. This is not an opinion about animals. It's an insult. If someone stops you on the way to Opsi and asks, excuse me, sir, miss, do you know the way to the TF? And you say, or the person asked says, yes, I know, and then carries on walking. Do you know the way to the TF? And he says, yes, I know, and then completes his, goes on. Obviously, this person took the meaning literally. It is not a question of whether you know the way or not. I am asking you, in other words, to tell me how to get. I am asking for directions. I am asking for directions. So we've got to distinguish between the literal meaning and the implied meaning, the pragmatic meaning, the speaker meaning. And so we should distinguish between what words mean and what the speaker intends them to mean. We should differentiate between what words mean, literally, dictionary meaning, and what the speaker intends them to mean, the pragmatic meaning, not the dictionary meaning. Reading for specific purposes. There will be a course in the future about reading for specific purposes. If I don't go to another place, then I am most likely going to teach you this other course also in the future. We'll know more about this in that course. This is the last slide. There's no need to take a break and then end the class and then come back. We're gonna go through this last slide and then end the class, end the session. Okay? So can you bear with me, or would you like a break now? If you can bear with me, we can finish the class and then end our session.
I need to go to the toilet, doctor.
The only one?
Yeah, me.
Can I go to the toilet too, doctor?
So you are in a bad need of a... So shall we take a short break then and come back?
Yeah, we'll take
Yeah,
a short
5
break,
minutes.
doctor.
Yes,
Sure,
doctor.
doctor.
Thank you.
Okay, then let's take... how long would you like the break? 20 minutes?
10 minutes will be fine.
Yeah.
Okay, 10 to 15 minutes. Fine, go.
Okay. Thank you, doctor.
You're welcome.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, doctor.